what I was saying was, it's really strange that nowadays we can get online and do something like this, and it's kind of second nature. We've just grown so accustomed to this. And we at the leadership team in the Woodworkers Association kind of concluded that if we were going to continue to bring woodworkers together over the course of the pandemic, we were going to have to do it in such a way that we're still apart. And online is what our answer has been. And there are two ways that we have done that. The first one is through what much of the world has done, which is these Zoom meetings. And you may find this a little hard to believe, but I went through and methodically counted them yesterday. Since March 19, we have done 84 online events. We've done 84 events over the course of a lot of topics. We've had classes. We've done shop tours of various shops. We've started and continued a variety of special interest groups. There has been a spotlight that we've done on exceptional woodworkers like Del Cover and like Russ Philbeck. We've also had special events, like for instance, Mike McElney and Ed Gladney sort of did a retrospective on different outreach initiatives we've done for instance, a playground that was done up at Pendleton, or work that's been done in police stations and fire stations. These were just all different online activities that we did over the course of the last few months since March 19, and of course, general meetings, such as what we're doing here. That was the one thing that we've done. The second thing that we've done is that with the efforts of Mike Lewis and Jim McGeehan, we've actually reinvented our website. Our website, as I described last time, has been launched just as of the last general meeting. And it was thankfully from their efforts that we were able to bring our website into the main. Now, I don't intend to go over the website, but I do intend at these general meetings to draw attention to just a couple of things that have been added, because I want you to appreciate the fact that it's constantly changing and it's worth checking out. So I'm going to go ahead and just show you my browser and show you a couple of things. This is the home screen that you would arrive at if you went to the website. And the first thing I want to show you is on Saturday, we did an online event, which was a tour of Lumbercycle. And over here, if you were to come to our home screen and scroll down, just on the left-hand side is the link to our tour of Lumbercycle. You can watch the entire hour of video. This is a picture of their Encinitas facility, and it's there for viewing after the fact. Another thing that I mentioned last time, but we're in a special moment where there are actually two instances of it on the homepage, is we're putting the book, Constructing Wooden Toys, we're putting it out on the website slowly over the course of the next 15 months. And each month there's going to be a new chapter. We happen to have less than a month in between here. So there's two. There's Weed Whacker, chapter on making Weed Whacker, and then there's also further down the one on cars and trucks. Now, if you haven't seen the book, and yet you've got time on your hands and wood in your shop, and you'd like to make some toys, these are toys that include templates, step-by-step how to build them, pictures of the toys, as well as each time a description of how the book is put together, the techniques that are used, etc. So if you're curious to see what was in the book, here's a great way to get exposure to it. Going back up to the top of the page, there we are at the home page again. Just a little below on the left-hand side is our latest newsletter. Now, I'm going to just tell you that Tom Schultz puts a lot of effort into this, but that's not the main reason you should take a look at this. The most recent one is always there. It's therefore very easy to find, but we put time and effort into putting current information in there, and it's just useful. So we made it really available, easy to get to, and I just recommend that you check it out. Going back now to our homepage. So I'm going to show you that on the right-hand side, we have our Instagram feed. Now, it's just a social media feed. What you could use it for is up to you. We've chosen to use it to feature member projects. And from the first two right here, somebody's obviously in love. It's the same person who did both of those. And so I would tell you that I think Mike McElney's in love. These are the two projects that he sent pictures in, followed by a variety of other projects that people have done. Folks, if you want to have your projects be seen, send us your picture or send us a variety of pictures. If you click on any one of these pictures, it takes you to the Instagram post where there's a description of the project, and there may be multiple pictures of that project. We want to showcase what you guys are doing, and this is one way we can do it. So please, if you've got projects that you're proud of, send them in, and we'll get that going. Lastly, I just want to show you that in this section where the lumber cycle was, we have this View Full Archive. And this View Full Archive does not yet have all 84 events, but it has a lot of them. And all of these, as you scroll down, you'll see that there's a brief description and a link. I'll click on Russ Philbeck's. This is where he spent some time telling us about his ladder back chairs. And there's always a link here, which if you click on it, takes you to a page where there's a description of the event. There's a link to the video, and we also include the chat that took place over the course of that video so that people can see what was going on. In addition, people can just discuss it in a thread afterwards. So I just wanted to show you that there are two ways that the leadership team in the association is trying to bring value during the pandemic. One is through these Zoom events, which we continue to do. And frankly, if someone has other ideas they'd like to see, a particular type of woodworking, particular type of project, we'd love to consider it. And there's also the fact that we have the website, and there's lots of stuff that's happening there to keep people involved in woodworking. One more topic before I transition, and that has to do with collaborations. It wasn't something I thought to bring up on this call, but so many people in the past 2 weeks have told me they have really enjoyed the fact that the wood turners and the fine woodworkers have been collaborating, that I thought I'd at least give you a little bit of a backdrop and tell you the kinds of things we've been doing. It all started with the fact that we had a little tiny collaboration going on. And that collaboration was around the old tool swap meet at Rockler. And we helped with that event and selling food so that we could raise money for Turnaround for Vets. That then led to a tour of the Aspire Center. That then led to people like Brian, Paul, and General Tom coming to the SDFWA member shop. And from there, a whole bunch of things happened. Like for instance, when we launched our website, we got an article from Brian that was about CA adhesives. That's every bit as valuable to our members as it was to turners. And when we launched our site, it was one of our primary articles. We invited the turning community to our last general meeting with George Frondisca. Turners made us aware of an offer from the American Association of Wood Turners, inexpensive trial membership, and this incredible symposium. And a lot of us ended up going and joining that symposium. 3 days, wonderful demos, great learning. That wouldn't have happened if we hadn't been collaborating. We also invited folks from the Turners to see Russ Philbeck talk about his ladderback chairs, and on the lumber cycle tour of their facilities. Going back to the wood turners, we fine woodworkers were invited to a variety of demos. We saw Cindy Drozda work with turning Banksia pods, a thing I'd never even heard of before, but made some incredible results. Jeff Fleming did his airbrush presentation. Mike Mahoney did his tour of his shop and a variety of turning tours. So we've had the opportunity to participate in those demos. And of course, things like tonight, we invited the turners, and we have a variety of turners here tonight listening to our presentation from Paul Henry on restoration. So we all share in common, both communities, a love for woodworking. Some like it round, some like it flat, but we're not exclusively one or the other. And to the extent that we are interested in both, this just makes sense. So the collaborations have been good, I've been told. I certainly have enjoyed them. I've enjoyed them enough that I've joined the Turner's organization. And I guess Brian has enjoyed it enough too, as president of Turner's, he's joined the San Diego Fine Woodworkers. So there's a reason for us to keep collaborating, and we've done a lot of it. And to the extent that you folks think it's worthwhile, we should continue doing it. Anyhow, I just wanted to open it up with the ways that we've been trying to get things going while we can't get together physically through our website and through all the Zoom events, and also to tell you about these wonderful collaborations that have been taking place. I'd like to hand it off now to Gary. And Mike, if you wouldn't mind switching the spotlight to Gary, after which then we'll go to door prizes and come back to me where I'll introduce the featured speaker. Gary, take it away.
Thank you, Travis, and good evening to everybody. It is good to see everybody, if only by video, but at least it's a chance to see everybody again. And we welcome you all to the meeting tonight. Most of you are anxious to hear about the results of our furniture accessories contest, which I'm about to share with you. But before I do that, I've got another announcement that we'd like to make, and that has to do with our sponsorship program. As most of you know, your board of directors is very much focused on building the value of your SDFWA membership. And one of the ways that we do that is to try to find retailers and manufacturers that will partner with us and offer us some value to our membership, typically through discounts. And we've had good luck with that over the last few months, and tonight I'm pleased to share with you yet another addition to that list, and that is Taylor Toolworks, which is a specialty hand tools and woodworking supply company that's actually based in Missouri, but you can find them online. They also actually have a brick and mortar store, but that's in Missouri, so that's probably not going to be your first choice. They offer over 3,000 different specialty products. And during the course of some other conversations today, Mike Lewis was sharing with me that he uses them and has been very pleased with them. They kind of specialize in, I don't want to say off-brand items, but items that are not represented by the major retailers such as Rockler. So if you're looking for woodworking hand tools or supplies, I would suggest you give them a shot. You can find them at tatools.com, which is on the screen. And as a member of the SDFWA, you get 10% discount off of all your purchases, no minimum purchase required. And all you need to provide them is this discount code 24016. We'll actually get some physical cards to pass out to you, but you don't need the physical card. All you need is that number. And if you forget it, it is listed on the website underneath the sponsor tab. So give them a shot. I think you'll enjoy paging through their website. It's got a lot of products on there. And let me know what you think, and we'll continue to look for more ways to build value in your membership. Okay.
Hey, Gary, could
yes.
you mention the fact that you also added a couple other people in the last few months, the last sponsor or two, because we do have the wood turners here, and it would just be nice for them to know that there are those other places they can get discounts too.
I'll be happy to do that, and a special welcome to our wood turner guests. I've very much enjoyed sitting in on your last couple of meetings, and hope you enjoy ours as well. Saroyan Hardwoods is one of the ones that you're probably familiar with because they're up in the San Marcos area where most of you are. We also added Bennett Crone, which is on the other end of the spectrum. They're way down in Otay, so a little bit further to get to, but offer an incredible value on lumber and hardwood. So if you're so inclined to check them out as well.
Thank you.
Okay, time to talk about good news, and that's the results of our furniture accessories contest. Before I do that, I want to thank all of you who submitted entries. As I think everybody is aware, the idea was not only to stimulate all of you to get out and do some more woodworking, but to generate products that we can sell in our holiday gift sale, which is coming up in November. So we appreciate your donations to the contest, and had some spectacular results that I'll share with you in a moment. But first, I want to recognize Dallas Keck, who was kind enough to serve as head judge again. A very thankless job, but he wisely recruited a bunch of people to help him so that he could point the finger away if somebody was unhappy with the results. And Oiling Kwan and Mark Humphreys in particular, and I think there was a crew of 3 others that were part of that. So thanks to all of you for judging that for us. So with no further ado, on to the results. We are paying 3 places, if you will. Second runner-up is Sharon Sikora with this absolutely beautiful jewelry box made from maple and walnut. The picture, as good as it is, just doesn't do the quality of the piece justice. It is a perfectly executed piece of woodworking. Those drawers slide in and out, and they slide absolutely perfectly. I mean, this is quality woodworking at its absolute finest. So, Sharon, congratulations to you. You get a $25 Amazon gift card for second runner-up in our appreciation for donating such a fine piece to the holiday gift sale, along with the 100 other things you do to support the association and the shop, by the way, I might add. First runner-up is Jim Franz. Jim, a lot of you know Jim. He is box making is one of his specialties. He made this absolutely gorgeous box. However, it was a bit of a collaboration. Mary Russo, who a lot of you also know, loves to do marquetry, and she did a number of marquetry panels, including the koi that you see in the top of this box. And she made a number of these panels, but didn't have time to build boxes around all of them. So she asked Jim Franz if he would go in with her and build the boxes to support the panels. And as a result, we've got a lot of beautiful boxes with a lot of beautiful marquetry. And this is one of their finest efforts. And it really, again, is an absolutely gorgeous piece. It's a jewelry box. This piece here is the top, of course. When you lift the top up using this black knob, it opens up like it was hinged on the back. In reality, while it feels like a hinge when you open it, and it stands erect when it gets to 90 degrees open, there is no hinge. And it's designed so that it fits and turns and opens in this recess right here on both sides. Really an ingenious piece of engineering and a fabulous piece of woodworking. And so congratulations to both Jim and to Mary. And then there's the grand prize, and Jim, by the way, gets a $50 Amazon gift card, and there's no word yet as to whether Mary gets to share in that or not. We'll have to there. And then to the grand prize, and believe me, it is grand in every respect, this beautiful Lazy Susan produced by Werner Pica.
Wow.
It's hard to find enough superlatives to tell you what a beautiful piece this is. And because it was submitted just Saturday, we didn't have a chance to get it professionally photographed. So I apologize for it not being a high quality photograph, because it is an absolutely gorgeous piece. I think there's 12 segments. I tried counting them, but I only had 10 toes. And by the time I got around and started on the fingers, I had my shoe in my hand from the toes and got lost, all confused. I don't know. But anyway, it is a gorgeous piece. Werner is has a phenomenal talent for this type of woodworking. If you recognize this name, it may be because he also finished in first place in our cutting board contest in January.
Oh.
And he was the one, some of you may remember his piece. It was the guitar-shaped cutting board that had depicted a broken string in the marquetry.
Yeah.
And his marquetry is absolutely flawless. It's incredible. I tried to take a close-up picture here to show you. There's not only a butterfly, but there's actually a cobweb up here. And the detail is just spectacular. It's 24 inches across. It's a beautifully smooth running Lazy Susan. We plopped Dallas up on top of it and spun him around a couple of times. And he seemed to enjoy the ride. So Werner, we just can't tell you how much we appreciate the quality of this piece and your generosity in donating it. I hope all of you will have a chance to see it in person at the holiday gift show, if not before. It is really a spectacular piece. And of course, Werner walks away with the $100 first place cash prize. So congratulations to him and to all of the winners. The sale is coming faster than I care to think about. It's now less than 4 months away. It's November 20th and 21st. The easy way to remember the dates are it's the weekend before Thanksgiving. It'll be that Friday and Saturday. We'll be accepting donations up until the 1st of November. So 11/1 is the deadline. We hope we will continue to receive donations from you and helping us with our #1 fundraiser for the association. We are doing a number of things to facilitate getting ready for that. One of the things that we've started up is a Sunday afternoon group headed up by Mark Humphreys and Oiling Kwan, and they are specializing in helping us finish up projects that come in either in need of finish or final sanding or shaping or finishing, be it oiling or waxing or varnishing or whatever. And they are meeting every other Sunday afternoon. So if you'd like to be a part of that, they would love to have your help. It's just a couple hours to get together with other woodworkers there at the shop and do some good and help us get ready for the sale. 2 quick points before I turn it back to Travis first of all, we have had a number of pieces of equipment donated to the shop, and we are overrun with excess equipment. So we've, John has gotten together and priced it out for us and cleaned it up and got it ready to go. And there's pictures of it on the website. There should be a link in the chat section of this Zoom presentation, but it's also now got a link right smack in the middle of the website. If you pull up SDFWA.org, it's right there front and center. And you can check out, we've got a couple of compressors on there. We've got a bandsaw, a drill press, I think a belt sander. I forget what all we've got on there, but there's a number of nice pieces. They're priced to give you a bargain, and we need to get them sold and get them out of the shop. So please have a look at that. And then finally, just a bit of a teaser. One of the things that we've tried to do at the member shop is bring in pieces of equipment that you may not have in your own shop. And we've just added a new piece courtesy of Bridge City Tool Works, one of our other sponsors that's a relatively new sponsor. And it's a chopstick master. And it's designed to facilitate the production of chopsticks using one of the Bridge City hand planes. And it's a really unique device. And Travis is dying to jump in here, so go ahead, Travis. You got to unmute yourself, though. We can't hear you.
I'm sorry, Gary. I just was wanting you to know if you thought we were seeing you, we're still looking at the grand prize.
I know. I can't quit staring at that thing.
Beautiful.
I'd rather look at that than this, right? Anyway, if you need chopsticks, we now have a tool to produce them in the member shop. So thanks for listening, and Travis, back to you.
Thank you, Gary. So he said back to me, but I think what he meant to say was back to Jim Strawn. So Mike, could you put Jim Strawn in there? There we go. And just like I was muted, Jim, you were muted currently.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep.
Hey, first off, I'd just like it real quickly, and we still have a raffle. And tonight's winner is a familiar name. It's Doug Gleesner. Holiday gift get Doug. So if Doug would.
Oh, wow.
And he's getting a Festool vacuum. Very nice gift. And so it's kind of like a going away gift for Dougie. And so.
That is very nice.
Thank you.
Try to keep the raffle going, and this was on the club, so enjoy, Doug. So I'll unmute.
Thank you very much.
Congrats,
okay.
Doug. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to why we really all came here, which was to hear a presentation from Paul Henry. Now, again, I'm relatively new to woodworking and to San Diego, so I didn't know who we were reaching out to, but Dale Cover suggested it, and Pete did all the work to line up getting Paul Henry to be our next speaker. But I had to introduce him, So I decided I needed to talk to him to find out what this was all about. And when I learned as a first data point that the man taught at Palomar for decades, bam, okay, that's super great credential, okay? That's a wonderful starting point. I learned that among his various expertises was furniture restoration, which on the surface to me didn't mean a whole lot until I started to see some of his pictures of the work that he had done. It kind of took my breath away, but I knew it was going to be good for our audience when I learned that he was also going to be able to share some important principles, that whether you do this in small scale or large scale, for fun or for profit, these principles of restoration would be something that would make your work be better. And so as a consequence of learning what he'd be presenting, I'm genuinely quite excited to be introducing Paul. He's going to give us a presentation, and then because we're all nosy about each other's shops, we talked him into sharing with us his shop by giving us a tour. After which then we'll go to a Q&A. Now, because we have over 100 people here, in terms of how we can ask questions while Paul is presenting, if you wouldn't mind putting them into the chat box, I'll do my best to sort of slide them into Paul when there's a gap in the conversation. But after he's finished his tour, we'd like to open it up. And if you look at the bottom of your screen, you'll see that there's a participants menu, and, excuse me, there's also a chat menu, which you guys have already seen. There's a raise hand button in that. And if you click raise hand, then Mike will see that you'd like to ask a question, and he will unmute you and turn the floor over to you, okay? So with that as a backdrop, we've all reviewed the technical sides of things. We're all ready to go with Paul. And so Mike, if you would take the focus off of me and put it onto Paul, we're in business. Paul, welcome. You're still muted, so unmute yourself, please.
I can come off.
So your phone, you need to get the phone unmuted if that's what you're going to use for your audio.
How's that?
There you go. Perfect. Thank you. Go ahead. Mike, you muted him accidentally. If you could unmute him.
Moving target, didn't mean to do that.
That's okay. Paul, you'll be live again in just a second.
He,
He's got 110 people to keep track of. Mike does not have an easy job.
Paul, if you could just please unmute yourself, that'll work on your phone.
That would be even easier, Paul, if you could just unmute yourself again.
How about
Perfect.
that?
Great.
Okay. Now I need to find my yeah. I thought we ran through all this to make sure it was going to run smoothly, but
what do they say about the real thing? It's always going to have problems. But there we have it.
okay. So I'm assuming that you can see my screen and that
We can.
Okay, very good. I want to talk about responsible restoration. First of all, thanks to Travis, thanks to Peter, thanks to Del Cover for inviting me here, actually inviting me. Some of you gray may remember that I did speak before the Fine Woodworkers Association probably 20 or 25 years ago. I don't even remember what I said at that time, but I'll try not to repeat myself. While I have the floor, though, I would like to say that I did teach at Palomar for 20 years, and it was a remarkably fine experience. I want to thank Chris Feddersen and Dave Thompson, but especially to Russ Philbeck. I don't know if you're out there, Russ, but Russ was the guy who got me through the curriculum committee and the accreditations committee. Not an easy task for somebody who had 7 years of undergraduate, still managed to get away without a degree. I had 20 years of experience, and I had Russ at my back, and they allowed me to teach. And it changed the way I think about my work. It changed the way I think about the furniture world in general. And I do appreciate all of that. It was 20 years of subsidized study. I was probably going to study this stuff anyhow, but they've just made it a focus, and I really do appreciate that. And I appreciate all of you former students who might be out there for taking my class, which was not always the best in the very beginning, I would admit that. But 20 years after, it was pretty good. I enjoyed that. So there's another group that I am associated with for just about as long, 20 some odd years, and that's the Furniture Society. I assume we're all woodworkers here, and many of us make furniture, but the Furniture Society is about makers, yes, not just wood, metal, concrete, all kinds of crazy materials, but also museum people, craft guild people, people who are teaching in MFA programs around. It's a really heady group of people that talk about furniture in the way, if you've taken my class, in the way that I really like to think about furniture and how it forms the way our society values things. So when I was at the first Furniture Society conference that I went to 2 decades ago, in 1999, I got to meet Joe Godla, and Joe was at the time the head curator of the Getty. And he gave a presentation, including this table, that he had to restore for this Rococo room at the Getty. And if you took my class, you know this piece. It's an Ovid piece that was 1756 or so, and he took it apart and just blew us all away with what he had to deal with. And he said during that presentation that they use always the 4 rules of the American Institute of Conservators in how they assess how American Institute of it's actually the American Institute for Conservation now. That used to be called the American Institute for the Conservation of Historical Objects. You know, everything from tombstones and historical houses to pottery and furniture. How do you handle? How do you make sure to ensure that this piece will become valuable for the future generations? And they have 4 rules that I will get to in just a minute, but I do have to go ahead. The conferences for Furniture Society are always stunning. The people there are great. But one of the most beloved parts of it is a thing called Slide Wars. And it's a chance for you to put 5 of your own images up on the screen and have the entire congregation look at them. And it's after hours, and there's a few inebriants involved. And so it becomes more of a roast than a sort of a discussion of present tense and furniture. So it's an awful lot of fun, great for community building. And it's all these new fangled pieces of furniture. And so one year I decided to break things up, and I gave these 5 slides. Looks like we're going in circles here, but so I said, enough of this new furniture, let's talk about old furniture, because I didn't think we talked about old furniture enough in this group. And I said specifically, since this is an organization trying to dedicate to the younger people and getting them involved in furniture, I said, try restoration and repair work as part of keeping your shop alive, you know, between commissions. Usually it's short-term work. You get in and out fairly quickly. It's fairly petty cash. It's very consistent with the community service. And you get to do work that you really can't do in contemporary work, like repairing these kinds of carving. And so I said, that is one reason that I like to work with old pieces, but another one is because you see all of the stories that come in the piece if you look closely enough. And I worked on a cylinder desk like this, and I said to them, as I'm saying to you now, you know how this is made. It's a form that you build the boards up over the top of and clean it up, and then you veneer it. So in this case, the piece that I was working on, the way they broke that cylinder off of the form was by using newspaper. And newspaper was the breakaway. And because you never see the back side of it, they didn't clean up the back side of the newspaper.
Ooh.
Looked at that newspaper, and I couldn't get a date on it, but let's say it's, you know, late 19th century London. And this turns out to be a police blotter. And it turns out there was a woman who had a conflict with a policeman, and I'll read it for you. She said, screamed and kicked and scratched the face of the policeman, tried to bite him. She was charged before her magistrate and sentenced to something I couldn't tell. But the judge charged Burchell, the jailer, to go out in search of her bonnet, which had been lost in the melee. Now, this is why I like furniture, and I got a really good laugh, and I got a a lot of attention for looking at old pieces. But Alfred Sharp and I started talking about it afterwards because I never gave sort of guidance. I encourage people to get into repair and restoration, but I never gave any kind of guidance as to warnings, how to approach it. And so Alfred and I presented at the very next conference, Responsible Restoration, which brings me to where we are tonight, this presentation adapted for this group. And here are the 4 rules of the American Institute for Conservation. You should write them down and keep them handy. Number 1, respect the integrity of the piece. Fundamental. The piece is more likely older than you are, will last longer than you do, and what you do to it will ensure that it is saved for future enjoyment, unless you muck it up. Number 2, you work to a common standard. Now this, of course, means that you understand what the common standard is and what the rules are for how you should approach these things, but it also means that you have to treat all pieces the same way, a common standard. Number 3, use only methods and materials that are completely reversible. I know there's a lot of discussion in this, on this one about the uses of Bondo or epoxy or other things that may or may not be reversible, and everybody has an opinion, and we'll see. So number 4 is record your work before and after. Now this is important, especially if you're working for an institution, for ye old furniture repair shop like myself here in Carlsbad. Most of my record keeping was name, phone number, and how much they owe me. But I have lately started to keep better records and give the customer a nice piece that says what I did before and after, so that they can do what they wish with it. So these are the rules, but you know that every attorney general knows that it's not the rules, it's how you enforce the rules that makes all the difference, right? And so how do you enforce these rules in the shop? Number 1, respecting the integrity of the piece means don't steal the hardware. Even if you think it'll look better on your own piece, the hardware is essential to the piece of furniture. And I told the customer that these hinges have been replaced. She said, how do you know? Well, you take the hinge off, and if there's a few extra holes down there, you know that it's been replaced. But the dead giveaway is if it's a nice piece of furniture and those hinges are the very best that True Value has to offer, you know somebody's ripped them off. Bad form, don't do it. Working to a common standard means you can't look at these things like, they call these balloon back. I hate the term Victorian, but these types of chairs that are intense short grain. I have repaired dozens, scores, maybe hundreds of them. And eventually you say, I hate these things. Can I just epoxy it together? No. Common standard means you have to apply that standard to all the pieces. And I also use this slide because if you have hair upholstery like this, the old jute and hair upholstery, do not let anyone put foam rubber and Dacron on there instead. Keep the integrity of the piece. The old upholstery is essential. So respecting the integrity of the piece might mean don't cut off the legs of that nice little plant stand just so it fits under your window, which I obviously did. And I told the customer that it's probably going to look terrible and it would look like an amputee. She said, it's mine, I want it shorter. So here's the big difference between working for an institution and working as ye old repair shop in the village. The customer is the king, not the piece. So you do what, you have to make a judgment as to what they're asking you to do, but your dedication is to the customer here. And alterations happen all the time. So this piece came in, this is a Biedermeier, and this is what, I ballpark at 1820, 1840, 1845. It's Austrian, and my customer Gisela, which is the Austrian form of Giselle, I suppose, she brought this with her from Austria to Carlsbad, and it had some veneer repairs. She brought it into me to take a look at. And I opened it up and took the pigeonhole part out, And I saw this whole new construction down underneath. And so I had to go back and look at that pigeonhole area. And I realized that somebody had very skillfully covered up where there maybe had once been a drawer. The drawer was missing and they had to cover it up and make it look normal. It was a beautiful job, an alteration that was truly classic. And you can see it's fairly recent. It's very new wood. That bracket that slides back and forth is attached to the fall front. And it's counterweighted with that lead weight there. And you see, that's vintage. That's period. That's really great stuff. And you can also see where the maker had to chop through the bracket. I said, wait a second. Why would you build it so that you had to chop through a frame just to be able to have a bypass? So I flipped this whole thing over on my bench, and I could see that this entire Biedermeier cabinet was rebuilt over the top of another cabinet with a scrolled pediment on the bottom that was probably 1800. Hopelessly out of date by 1840, and then entirely altered, entirely. So alterations happen. And I am guilty of quite a few. This is a piece that I made, it's in my house. The customer said, I have this big English armoire with these big, ugly mahogany panels. And it was a very dark, heavy armoire. But it was hotel furniture, not particularly wonderful furniture. And he wanted the panels taken out, put glass in there, and put gold flocking on the inside. I said, sure. And I stole the panels. The left-hand side, that cherry, used to be an apron for a French desk. And one of the more wealthy clients in San Diego, he said, those points hurt his knees. Could I take them out? And I suggested putting a new apron in there with pencil drawers. And he said, great idea. So I got that piece of cherry, it's a 19th century reproduction of an 18th century bureau plaque. So that cherry piece is there. And the other style and the drawer fronts are pine pieces from an English, like an English pine table. Customer brought to me. The legs were totally rotted. Those apron pieces, I have a lot of wormholes in them, could not be rebuilt. So I suggested rebuilding the base entirely. I didn't tell her, for better or worse, that the top was already a replacement, very skillfully colored to match the bottom. So I made a whole new bottom and very skillfully matched the top. And I'm sure she's still saying it's an antique. So knowing what you're dealing with is absolutely essential. I got a call from a very nice lady with a British accent. She said she had a Carlton House desk. And I'm sure I got this job simply because I knew what that was. You can see across the front, it had veneer repairs that needed to be done. But the fascinating thing to me was that little drawer in the corner. She said she'd never been able to get it open. I thought, oh my gosh, I have to look. So I had a key that actually worked and opened that up. And it was empty. Nothing in it. Too bad. But, I mean, this is what counts for secure messaging back in those days. You could drop it into a locked drawer. Just marvelous. So we need to talk a little bit about finish, and this is another very controversial area. John T. Kirk, a number of years ago, encapsulated the idea that, I mean, you know from Antiques Roadshow that if you hadn't refinished it, it would be worth 10 times what it's worth now, right? You know that. So you're not supposed to refinish. John T. Kirk said, if you find something in a ratty finished position, leave it alone, don't touch it. And, that is true because for evidence, you might be able to tell that the dirt came from Birmingham, England, instead of something. It's evident. I understand that for historical pieces. But when you're talking about your customer in the repair shop, even John T. Kirk backed off a little bit and said that for displaying of beautiful pieces, we do need to clean it up, not to the position that it was when it first was made, because it looks nothing like this. This has patina that you really love and want to see. So you need to make a judgment that the piece you have either requires full finishing or mostly what I do, restoration work, meaning you can deal with black and hide blue. And I'm almost always work with pieces that are before World War II. After World War II, you've got nitrocellulose lacquer, you've got epoxies, you've got plastic resins, polyurethane. stuff I don't want to deal with. Before World War II, it's basically hide glue and shellac. So here's a finished problem that came into my shop. It's a customer that's right here in Carlsbad, and that's all original glass. Scared me to death. I hate having customers' glass, but it's such a blonde colored, it's walnut. And on the backside, you can see the marks are still there. It's a handmade piece, and it smells old. You know, you've seen enough of these, you know that this is 1850 something. The knobs on the bottom drawer are replacements. That's more of an Eastlake kind of a thing. There's a single hole behind them, so it must have had a single knob at one time. The customer loved the color, but it was very fuzzy. There's almost no finish on it. It was all oxidized. And I handled it with gloves, thinking that my thumbprints were going to show up on it. That's how careful I was trying to handle this finish. I eventually buffed it down so that the fuzziness was gone and applied paste wax in a very light and repetitive way, which brought up the color. It didn't, I'm not putting on shellac, which would have turned the color dark. You see, inside of the cabinet was dark walnut. The outside was all bleached blonde, and she wanted it to stay that way. So I managed to satisfy her on that account. But I told her that I thought that the bonnet part looked a little odd. And I asked her, why is it that the bonnet is not centered on the center of the cabinet? And she said, I never noticed that. She lived with this piece her whole life. So if the piece below is 1850s-ish, that molding across the top with the embossed area, I think it's branded even, it's dark and it pushed in. That machine didn't come in until about 1880. And so I suspected that whole piece of molding on the top was new. And I found out on the top where it says patented something or other, that was a big selling point in the late 19th century. If you had a patent pending, that was a selling point. So I was pretty well assured that that piece of molding was bought separate. Now I had to figure out why he goofed up. And on the left side, he centered that embossed area, but it seems that the back part is wasn't quite long enough. And so he could have put in just a block of wood, but he mitered it in. And I think maybe that's the proper way to go. Even just below that miter, you can see that little block that he had to put in there. And on the opposite side, again, he centered that thing. And again, it was too short to the back. But you can see that embossed part that he placed in there was hilarious because it is exactly the cutoff from the face. He stretched this little piece of molding to the inch to make it work on this piece of furniture. And it works in looking at it closely.
That's quite a bit of detective work there, Paul.
This is what I love about furniture. And, I'll later on, I'll get one more in before the end of this presentation. It's always great to get a job where you have to replace a carving. How much of the carving can you replace? I debated how much of that should I just try to replace the part that's missing? Nah, just make the whole thing. It's easier to put a color on it. And the coloration, this was long ago when Dell asked me to do this. We were talking about doing an actual in-person demo about how I bring colors into these things. And I'm using shellac and these aniline dye colors, these little Mohawk powdered colors. And they go on just little pieces, a little bit at a time, as you build up to the color you want. And so as a demonstration, it's, as I told Travis, it's kind of like watching paint dry, but it's shellac. It's a little bit more interesting. So if you get a job in and you don't know what it is, ask a question and contact your colleagues. This came into my shop. The customer said it was Eastlake, and I looked at it and I said, that is not Eastlake. So I put it up my network here, and Patrick Edwards nailed it immediately. It's Renaissance Revival, Civil War era, and I got to work on this. He had 2 of the chairs, a settee, a table. I had to replace a whole bunch of the carving on it. Just a delightful job. And during the course of this, I got some advice from another colleague, Mike Pogniski. I think he just moved to Massachusetts now. But he said, if you look at that tack strip along the bottom, it's not going to survive another upholstering. So he said, what you should do is take hide glue and saturate that whole area, and then cover it with linen and saturate the linen with hide glue. providing something like a matrix, almost like a fiberglass using hide glue and linen, so that when the new tacks go in, it becomes a solid mass and preserves it. And it's all reversible. It's hide glue, totally reversible. So I work with an upholsterer that deals with with the hair and the tie springs. And this customer, this is an Eastlake piece. This customer brought me this piece. This is the finished product. He brought it to me when his upholsterer took it apart. And I don't know what he did to take it apart, but this is what I got. And there's just sometimes nothing you can do but replace the parts, replace the tack strip entirely. And these rules are rules, but it's judgment and experience that tells you what's the proper thing to do. So this is the chair with the brand new tack strips in and the brand new apron around the sides and back, but all the rest of it is still original. All of visible is original. And this is the chair in finished product. And when my wife saw this, she sort of gasped. And so I think I should somewhat apologize for the rather bad taste in upholstery. The woman who owned this chair originally worked with V&A in Paris in the fashion industry and wrote 2 very critical books about fashion and V&A in the 30s. And in her later years, she sat in this chair, and to prove how hip she was, she got this very flower-powered fabric in the 60s. And so when my customer found out that the fabric was still available, he had to have the whole thing done exactly as she would have had it sitting in it. So there you have it, exactly. And then this one came in. I've got a few more. This one came in and said there was a broken leg. I was able to verify immediately, yes, indeed, that is a broken leg. I do love that someone decided to stick a dowel straight on through it and try to fix it that way. Didn't work. So here's the chair sort of half opened up. And I know that there's many shops in the world that would have looked at this and said, let's just yam that puppy with epoxy, stick the leg back on and go home. Because the rest of the chair was in fairly good shape. But it's an old piece, and it really was important to do this correct. So I decided to I could have replaced the leg, but then I would have to find a stain or a color match, and it'd be almost more difficult to replace the leg than to repair it. So I found as much of the original that I could and socketed a whole new top onto it with a tenon going deep into it. And it looks like it was a lot of work, but at least I kept as much of the original leg as possible. And for that dowel going straight in, it was actually quite secure. So I used it as part of the tenon to go back into the leg. And here's what it looks like. You can see just a little bit of the angled piece, and the whole front of the face is not, but those are fairly easy to touch up. And those are the colors and the products that I use to sort of bring these colors back up. Now, the other side was, they said the other side's fine. No, the other side was broken off entirely too. The original had these tenons going deep into it so that they actually connected, which meant that there was only the back part of the leg to hold this together for the blow to the bottom leg of it. So it was all broken off, in fact, too. The facade part of it was still good. It was just the back part that was broken off. And so I made exactly the same thing on the other leg. And here's the chair. It's about an 1820s chair. And so all of the effort that I took to put this together was really worth it. The customer loved it. And I just wanted to show this little detail of the corner bracket there. Because it's an upholstered chair and the upholstery wants to pull everything in, that block is shouldered so that it doesn't fall out and doesn't slip. It's shouldered into the sides, right? Very nice, very nicely done. And then there's one last piece that I want to talk about before we go to this slide to the shop tour. And it shouldn't surprise me. It happens often enough. People give me things. And I showed up at the shop and this chair was here, sitting out in front of my shop. I get bed headboards, I get broken rockers, I get all kinds of things. People say, give it to the furniture guy. This showed up in my shop. And I looked at it and I said, this carving is the real deal. This is a real something. So again, I put this out to my colleagues. Mike Pod said, not likely English or Irish. He said, maybe Italian because it's so vigorous. Patrick Edwards nailed it again. He said, Portuguese, 1735. Portuguese, 1735. So I sent this out. Joe Godla looked at it. David DiMuzio looked at it. They all said, Portuguese, 1735. I actually showed this to Jonathan Prown at Chipstone, and he said, I wonder if this is one of those Portuguese revivals from the 19th century. Portuguese revival? Who knew? I had no idea there was a Portuguese revival. But all of these people who said late 19th century Portuguese revival hadn't actually looked at the chair. They looked at the photos. And I'm looking at the chair saying, I know 19th century stuff. This is older than that. This wood is really fragile. It's worm-eaten. The carving on it is crisp, unfussy, direct, and bold. Just looking at it, I said, this thing is really older than that. So I keep looking at it. I took a picture of the caning, and I sent the caning to Brandy Clements, who is an expert in historical caning, believe it or not. And she said, looks like a mid to late 19th century because the small and the large weave was very typical of that. Oh, man. I said, well, it could still be an early 18th century piece that was recaned in the late 19th, no? So I looked underneath, and there's you can see how bold that carving is. I mean, he was not fussy at all. He just whacked off enough of the wood to give a cleaner edge on the bottom. And if you look at the saw cuts, if it was vertical to the grain, you would say bandsaw, which would immediately say late 19th. There were no bandsaws earlier than that. But it's not. It's at about that 15-degree angle that a guy with a bow saw would use to cut. So I thought, wow, maybe. But the telltale was that black smudging. The black gunk that they used to antique this did not go up all the way around the underside of the chair rail. It was a fake. It was a reproduction made to look old in the late century. But the kicker here is that the seat part, you can see how it's sewn in kind of caning. In order to redo that caning on the seat, you had to take the arms off. You have to basically disassemble the chair. And so somebody in the recent past decided to go with the hammer-in style of caning, which has now failed, and which the antique value of the piece is basically gone. And so, all the research was not for naught, but I know now that this was a reproduction, maybe a fake, made in the late 19th century to make it to look like an early 18th century Portuguese chair. How about that?
Huh.
So you got to do some research to find out what you're doing. And if you have something that you don't know what to deal with, please call. Talk to Patrick Edwards, call me. Advice is free. We'll probably try to steal the job from you if it's a good one, but don't mess up a really nice furniture if you don't know what you're doing. So there's my bottom line advice. So shall we go into my phone and go into the shop tour? Or are there any questions?
Paul, before we do, could you take us back to that page where you had the 4 principles? I'm just kind of curious if there are questions in the audience about those, because I didn't necessarily myself understand the subtlety behind them, and there may be others who have questions as well. So maybe you could just run down those 4 again, and if you can think of from what you showed us an example of it, like respect the integrity of the piece. I certainly got that.
Yeah.
With a common standard, is that your standard that you're talking about?
No, I think of this as what are the methods and materials that are acceptable? Is Bondo acceptable as a filler? Some people say yes, people say no. You can reverse Bondo. It's not like epoxy. And I will use epoxy, for example, to hold something together that is not meant to come apart. If you put together something that's epoxied together and you cannot get the chair apart ever again, you've done a disservice to the piece. But before I gave the example that I had a client who got angry at his wife and threw a soup can at her and missed her, but he hit his wife's chair, which broke the spindle in clean. And I used epoxy to put that end together because, I mean, yeah, I couldn't take the chair apart. There was no point to taking the chair apart. And I wanted the strongest glue that I could think of to hold those spindle ends together. So in certain uses, I will use epoxy.
Got it. And the other question I had was with regard to the last one. You know, this detective work that you did, for instance, when you found that there was a police blotter
Yeah.
as lighting, and later on when you determined that that last piece was a fake, what kind of documenting do you do in those kinds of instances? Or was that really just to satisfy your curiosity because this wasn't going into a museum?
Yeah, exactly that. You know, if I had the idea that it was a 1735 and it had the original caning untouched, and if you look at it, there are no repairs. There, I mean, for a piece that old, it would have almost always had some part of it patched in with new work because something broke. But it's almost completely there. So it would have had to have been hermetically sealed for all of those years to actually be what I thought it might have been. Recording the work is something that I am doing a lot more, like, you know, for that Carlton House desk, and I've had a chance to work on a few others. But it's mostly for my own enjoyment. I have a set of bentwood chairs here that are turn of the century, 1900-ish, but they have a tag on the bottom that said UCS Poland. And I was able to determine that that was a trade union in the shipyards and that these chairs were used in the union hall. So, you know, the information is out there if you're interested. And it's astonishing what is out on the web.
That's cool.
But, you know, as Yogi, you can observe a lot just by looking.
Yeah, right. Are there other questions out there? Because next on the lineup would be to satisfy all our curiosities of what, 1,200 square foot shop, is that right?
Yeah, just slightly under.
Cool, cool. And so if there are no other questions, yeah, Paul, go ahead and make us jealous.
Okay, so
You need
we're
to
going to switch now. Let's see.
Mike, if you would toggle to his phone, please.
He needs to wake his phone up. It's asleep.
Oh, Paul, could you please unshare your screen first? Because
okay.
unless you do that, he can't toggle and spotlight your phone. There we go. Now we've got your phone. Thank you, Mike.
All right, so there you are. You're on?
We are. We're seeing you.
Okay. Well, I'm going to turn around and just show you where I just was. That is the main bench area. That main bench is, it's 2 pieces of 1-inch MDF with a maple border. And on top of it, I put a piece of 5/8 MDF. I've got a right hand and a left hand vise. And so with a bench like this, I don't mind putting a pin nail in it if I need to secure something or drive a screw into it. When the top gets really bad or is no longer flat, I turn it into something else and put a fresh piece on it. So there's the other bench. The tool works are over there. I've got lumber racks up above the workbench that hold the lighting from underneath. Now, this shop was built in the 70s as a wood shop. So I've got 2 major big doors on the long side of the building that go out into the yard. This is my ancient Delta 14. It's unlike any other because it doesn't have the lower blade guide. I had to improvise it. And the mounting for it is something that I have never seen and never been able to discover. It's a triangular shaft that used to hold the lower blade guide. And when I bought it in the late 70s, it had this sanding wheel attached to the outboard of the drive shaft.
Oh, yeah.
It's a steel plate. It's spin balanced. It's fantastic to come right off of the bandsaw and onto the disc. This is my showroom, so to speak. The yard. I'm in the village of Carlsbad and I get lots of walk-in traffic. So here's the heart of the milling area. It's a Powermatic 14 planer with the helical head. and it replaced an old 12-inch Parks planer that was a really bad machine that I was able to sell to Phil Gotch because Phil will buy anything. He probably has 3 of them and he just needed it for parts. And there's an 8-inch Powermatic helical head jointer, the matched set. The PVC pipe goes up and over into, you can't really tell, there's a closet there that holds the dust collector. The table saw, your basic Powermatic American version. And on the back side of that, I also have another table saw. This is an Atlas, a really nice old Atlas heavy duty, and I keep a dado blade on it. I have a third saw. This is a little Delta 8-inch Homecraft. It's a fixed arbor, meaning the table goes up and down. And the table also tips if you're feeling brave.
Interesting.
Yeah, but it's a very precise little tool if you put a little 8-inch blade on it. Behind the instrument division here, this is the instrument division of Paul Henry Furniture. And in that closet in there is another dust collector where everything goes. I put the dust collectors in closets, not just to mute out this noise, but to give you a wall to put things on. You can build off of it. So this is the assistance area. I have had assistants many, many times. Where these chairs are sitting is a 4x4 vacuum bag. Underneath that is it's set up to anytime I want. I can just pull that white cloth off of it and you got a vacuum bag. Behind there, tucked in the corner, is my Delta lathe. I've got a horizontal boring machine. I've got your vertical boring machine all in this area here. The clamp rack is quite photogenic. And over on this side, bedroom ladders. Let me walk over in front of this bandsaw. My beast of the bandsaw is this SCMI 600, just slightly less than a 24-inch. It's a great, great saw. And it has 3-phase power in the floor. This place was built with 3-phase power. Amazing. The closet here, this holds a can dust collector, which is good for the spindle sander, the Powermatic, and the bandsaw. I have another run of it going over to the lathe, but just for sanding. You know, when you're working on a lathe, the chips just go everywhere. You can't control that. But for sanding, I like to have that dust collector over there. Nice old English Windsor. Hey, you just look at this. Here's the repair. The spindle, you know, the ends get broken off. Here's how you repair it. It's ready for trimming. So you've got the Powermatic here. You got the sanding area. The chop saw and the DeWalt cutoff. I use the chop saw. The DeWalt I hardly ever use anymore. And this is the finishing area. It has all of the colors and stains and the spray guns, etc. That piece of furniture doesn't always sit here, but I have no place to put it, so it's here right now. Yeah, so this is, you're not gonna be able to see it. My lights for some reason are not on, but this, when people walk into my shop, this is what they see. And then I do have, I should walk over to my fabulous showroom. This is a little add-on that I put in. I'd love to have better lights and a little higher ceiling. There's an old piece from Best and Barnett. He still needs to come up and pick that up. And that leads into my office area over there. 1,200 square feet, built as a wood shop, built in the 70s. I managed to buy it in the 98, and so they can't kick me out. I'm here for the duration. Any questions on that?
Always a goal to not be able to be kicked out, huh?
You know, I always feared that I would have to be out in an industrial park in San Marcos somewhere, and
Yeah.
you know, that wouldn't be too bad. But I managed to stay here, and now there's a fancy French restaurant around the corner. You know, we're well caffeinated. There's a couple of brew pubs. Downtown Carlsbad is hopping right now.
Yeah.
So I'm delighted to be here. I'm getting a whole lot more walk-in traffic. And I always keep my cards and information out for people to see. It's been a good biz. I'm able to be here. It's great.
Just out of curiosity, what is your, how do you generate your leads? Where does your business come from? And are your customers mainly in Southern California?
Yeah, they're all local. And it's mostly word of mouth. I have a lot of these cards printed up with all of my pieces on it, and
Yes.
I hand them out. And, it is one of the greatest marketing things because they go up on your refrigerator. They stay there for a while.
Right.
It's really, it's good. And because I've been here long enough, I used to be in the back behind, next to the railroad tracks. And then just after I bought the place, they put in the commuter rail station and they put in a new road, and suddenly I'm in the middle of a village. So
That's pretty cool.
They would never give me a permit to do this again here.
Yeah.
But I'm grandfathered in.
Grandfather. That's great.
Yeah.
I think I saw Jim raise a physical hand as opposed to an electronic hand. Jim Strawn, did I get that right? Did you want to ask a question? No? Okay.
Yeah.
Other questions from the group?
No.
There are 100 people out there and nobody's got a question.
I have a
everybody's-
question, Travis, if I could.
Go for it, Doug.
Okay. Paul, I'm interested in how you match the refinishing when you make another piece. So how do you match the colors?
Yeah. I have tried many, many different ways. And, every piece, this is why a demo on restoration is so hard, because every piece kind of requires a different approach. If you're trying to match just like a surface color, these things work terrific. They mix with shellac. You can mix just a little bit and get a slight glaze and build that glaze, just as an antique sort of has many, many colors in it. And you can work with that. Some pieces just require some stains. I am not a really good French polisher. So I use Qualisol, which is a pre-mixed French polish stuff. And I find I get more consistent results with it. If I have to spray something, I have spray guns. But I will admit, rattle cans, absolutely essential for some things. It is. That's the art of it, really, is because you're trying to match not only the color but the shine and if there's distressed parts, you have to sort of add dots of color. You have to distress it. There's many different techniques to try to get a match on it. And I use the 5-foot test. If you're standing 5 feet away and you don't see the change, then you're successful. You're going to look close. You're going to see it.
Cool.
Thank you.
Hey, Paul, this is Pete.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, first of all, very interesting presentation.
Thanks.
I enjoyed it a lot. I really did. I was curious when you opened that cabinet and I saw all the rattle cans and you've got all your stains and dyes and all the rest of it. How much hassle do you get out of Cal OSHA or any of the city people?
Yeah. Well, when I first moved into this building, there were 3 of us here. And because the fire marshal knew it and because it was a fire trap, he inspected us every year. When it was just me here and no assistant, he stopped coming. So the fire marshal really, and he stopped also because at some point I wanted to turn that section of the shop into a spray booth. And I looked into it and it was just going to cost so much and take up so much of the space in the shop. And then I would have to be a finisher to make it worthwhile. And I said, I didn't want to do that. So I told the fire marshal, I'm not using any flammables. I'm using shellac. I'm not spraying. Basically, I'm not. And I'm using just brushes, and I use an awful lot of wax and shellac and milk paint. And so those are basically, this is basically all that cabinet. It's all milk paint and shellac. And sometimes I have to spray, and that's why the spray can. I know that those Mohawk catalyzed lacquers, you can buy them, but you have to buy them in gallons, and there's a shelf life. And so I buy them by the spray can. It's inefficient.
but for my uses, it's just fine.
Okay.
And because I have no employees, I don't really get hassled by anyone else.
Okay, thanks.
Hey, Mike, I see that Kevin Deal has his hand up.
Hi, Paul. This is Kevin Deal. I do
Hey.
furniture restoration up in Oceanside. I'm up by
Yes,
College
yes,
and
I know who
Oceanside
you are.
Boulevard.
Yes, indeed.
Great shop. I enjoyed the presentation. Beautiful work.
Thank you.
If you don't mind, I could weigh in on a question. I believe it was from Pete concerning the registry or the laws and such.
Yeah.
There's a code. It's called intermittent spraying, and that's what I fall under. As long as you don't have a spray booth in your shop, you're a lot less likely to get any kind of inspection. And if you're under a certain quantity, it's listed as intermittent spraying, and you don't have to have a spray booth. But I myself, I'm a strong supporter of Mohawk, and there's times you just have to have the spray cans.
I agree.
It's finishing is I don't know why more people don't get into it. It's exciting. It's fun. It's
okay. Well, send me some of your cards.
It's thrilling to get something right.
Send me some of your cards, because people are asking me all the time about refinishing, say, a tabletop, and I can't handle that here. And I know a couple of people, but they're undependable. And I know that some of the products that you can buy are not as good. I mean, I know a lot of cabinet people who are taking their stuff to Arizona to have it sprayed and then bringing it back.
Well, I go through a paint company that caters to Camp Pendleton. And so so they have to carry the stronger
some of
lacquer.
the stronger chemicals.
But yeah, I definitely like to come by and visit your shop one of these days.
Well, good. I got the lights on. You can see this is what it looks like when you come up.
Something good just happened there. That's great. Hey, Paul, Jan asked if you teach guitar making. Do you teach guitar making?
I keep saying that I'm going to close down the instrument division because it has never turned a profit. And I am enough of a musician to know that I haven't made a darn good one yet. So, no, I studied this with Jack at Palomar, and I tried, the thing about guitar making, it's a lovely procedure. The woodworking is fabulous. The setup is a pain in the butt. Making the strings play well, making them sound, a good setup can make a bad guitar sound good, and the exact opposite. You have a good guitar and the setup is bad, it plays terribly. So that part I don't like. I would not try teaching it. It's just too much fun to give up. so
you don't.
This is the newest one down there. So
got it.
Yeah.
Paul, was that a sound effect, or are you that close to the rail line?
I am right next to the tracks.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah. I am right next. I am the coaster station parking lot is right behind me.
Wow, that's great. It's easy to find you then.
Yeah, and if you notice, all the machinery has this white melamine because I'm 2 blocks from the beach. And the rust is incredible. I am fighting rust all the time. So I cover every machine with white melamine until I use it.
Got it. Huh.
But I'm 2 blocks from the beach. That's also not bad.
Josh has a question.
Hi, could I jump in with a question?
Yeah.
Hi, this is Joshua Dodia, and my question is, if somebody wanted to get into this skill set or line of work, what is a recommended starting point?
Excellent question. I was talking to Mike Pod about this just the other day. He said, if you want to cut hair, you got to go to school. You got to pass an exam. You have to apply for a license. You have to pay a fee. Then you can cut someone's hair. If you want to work on someone's Chippendale sofa, open up a sign. There's no accreditation required to open up a shop. If you want to work on nice pieces, you're going to have to show that you've gone through like the Winter Third program, or where else do they have conservation? Art Institute of Chicago has something. and there are places where you can learn this. I learned this on the job, a company called MDR, Moving Damage Repair. And honest to God, we repaired everything. They're still in biz. And, you know, the guy that showed me most of the touch-up stuff, he's long gone, but you know, I learned from him on that. And you know, the thing about repair work is you've got to have good hand skills. So the hand skills are important. If you get a good clean repair, the touch-up is easy. So working for a repair shop, I don't quite have enough work to hire someone. I wish I did. No, I don't. I don't wish I did. I'm very happy with the workload that I've got. But working for a repair shop gives you a good start on it. Honestly, I wish there was like a local school for such. I mean, Patrick Edwards went to Paris to the École Boulle. You can do that. But there are a couple others, and I'm not exactly sure where, but museum programs is a good place to start if you want to get into the full conservation aspect of it. You know, ye old repair shop, it's not rocket science. You know, most of the time you can look at it and figure out what mechanically needs to be done. And then the artistry from there is the touch-up and making it look like you didn't do anything. You know, I mean, for all of the work that I did on those chairs, rebuilding those corners, you can't see it. Nobody's going to see it. And that means I was successful.
Yeah. Hey, one question that came up was, you mentioned that you use shellac and denatured alcohol isn't available anymore. What do you do for mixing it?
You know what? I have 2 gallons of it left, and I don't know what I'm going to do anymore.
Okay.
Honestly, I don't know. I mean, there are ways to get what, Everclear or something. I honestly, I don't know. This is, you know, and naphtha. I tried to buy naphtha the other day. Sorry, they don't make that anymore either. So yeah, I have 2 gallons of denatured alcohol left, and I haven't figured out what to do after that. Drive to Arizona, maybe.
Yeah. There was a request that you talk about that dark red chair on the bench top next to where the guitars are.
That's a beauty. That's a beauty, isn't it? Yeah. This is a customer who brought this to me, I would say 15 years ago, and they could not find this piece. And I said, call me when you find it. They just found it.
Oh, wow.
So they brought this chair in. So this is going to be a challenge here because this fits obviously right there, and I don't want to lose the seat.
All right.
So I think what I'm going to have to do is come into the back side of that hole and try to slip a dowel in there, and then evacuate the back side of the spindle and slip it in from the front, and then repair the back. I can open up the legs enough to get, there's a tiny bit of end grain, you know, the ends of there's a little bit of touch there that I might have a purchase, but it's going to need a pin. It's going to need a dowel pin of some sort. And you know, it's the original milk paint. This thing is really very pretty chair.
Got it.
Now this one too, this is a very nice rocker. And I have to show you this repair because this is brilliant. That big plate steel on there. Yeah. This is, and the other side as well. It's like, see where the leg comes in. They put a big honking piece of steel there. The problem is that the rocker broke off. So I have to repair the rocker.
Just
so
FYI, Kevin loves caning and that sort of thing, and he says seats are made to be rewoven.
I understand. And you know, if that was the case, and if that's the only way to do it properly, but the rest of the chair is in solid shape, and I haven't touched it yet. And as I said, I've had this chair for about 15 years now. They just found this foolish piece.
Yeah. Yeah, I noticed that Paul Duffield has his hand up. You want to go ahead, Paul? Unmute yourself. Or not.
Yeah, okay.
Any other questions? I've seen that several people are interested in going on road trips to Nevada, Arizona. When it comes to denatured alcohol, it sounds like that's the default option.
It may be, and I don't know what else to do, but yeah, I found that problem. I'm almost out, and I'm 2 gallons. I'm going to be all right for a little while, but yeah, that's a definite problem. And as far as refinishing, it's the same thing. Some of the strippers that you used to be able to get, you can't get them anymore. So.
Hi.
Tom, man.
Paul?
Yeah.
I finally managed to unmute myself. Regarding the alcohol situation, I tackled this a year or so ago because I love to do shellac. And after doing a little research, I found that 99% isopropyl alcohol is just as or good or better. It's become rather expensive due to market forces recently, but it's possible to get it, and it's legal to have it shipped to California. And I find that it's absolutely wonderful for shellac.
So is that what they call Everclear?
I think that's ethanol because it's drinking alcohol. This is the medical stuff that you normally buy at a pharmacy in between 70 and 90%. But if you buy it with no water in it, that's the critical thing.
Got it. Yes, especially for shellac. You don't want the water. Yeah.
Hey, Paul, as we wind down, can we get you to switch cameras so we can see who the presenter was again? There's the guy that's been talking. Great. Are there other questions out there? If not, we'll go ahead and start winding this down.
One question?
Sure, go ahead, Mike.
I marvel at the clarity of your the visual as you walk around with your camera. I tried something similar with Russ Filbeck a few months ago or a few weeks ago, and it looked like I was underwater with an earthquake going on.
Well, that's the way my old camera looked. I had an old iPhone 6 that was terrible. This is the new iPhone, the newest one with the three lenses, and it's a remarkable change. So maybe that's what the problem was. No, this phone is great. The camera is terrific. And I'm an open shop. So if you're in the village of Carlsbad, if you want to come up to visit, feel free. If the doors are open, or if you want to make an appointment to come on up and talk, I'm always available. And as I said, I have always maintained design time and consultation time is always free. I don't charge to get to the end of when I'm designing something for someone. After 2 or 3 times visiting, I know whether it's going to work or not, and I can back out. But if it takes forever to get to the final product, the price usually reflects that. But to get people in the door, it's all free.
Yeah. Hey, Paul, just to confirm, somebody put the address of 2633 State Street in Carlsbad as your address?
That is correct. I am in the rear of that address. There is a building in the front with that address. I'm in the back. It's a big red building, and I'm right against the coaster station parking lot. So I'm on the frontage road on the back side of an address, which is always why it's been the cheap rent, because it was in the back next to the railroad tracks. Yeah,
right.
Hard to find, but that also helped me. To be honest with you, it helped me because if the weird guy in the back that can fix things is always more appealing than not. I don't know. I've always gotten good marks for the fact that I was somewhat hard to find.
Got it. Well, I personally am still kind of blown away by the horrible condition of some of the things you've shown us, and then how they were brought back to life. So congratulations, and thank you for sharing that with us.
Thank you. It's a real pleasure to do that. It's a real pleasure to talk to you folks.
Great. And just for everybody's information, our next general meeting is going to be on September 30th. And in the meantime, just keep tabs on the website and you can see all the activities that are going on. Paul, thank you very much for being a featured speaker today.
Thank you for your attention and for your patience. Thank you so much.
Have a good evening.
Thank you, Paul.
Okay.
Great
Bye-bye.
job.
Thanks,
Thank
Paul.
you.